All right, it is time to look at Paldea Evolved. And it's time to look at the top 10 cards. Now, this is a very, very stacked set. So where Crown Zenith, I had to cut it down to the top 5 cards because there weren't really that many good cards. And Scarlet and Violet, you got a top 10, and then like the couple of honorable mentions. Paldea Evolved is just loaded. Lots of honorable mentions. There's actually more honorable mentions than 10, believe it or not. The set's just absolutely loaded with great stuff. This is one of the best sets we've had since Guardians Rising. And I stick by that. This is an absolutely amazing set, and it will change how this game is played because there's some great stuff in it. All right, with that said, let's get started, of course, as always, by looking at the art highlights. So, art highlights, of course, we like to spotlight a few of my favorite artworks from the set. Just real quick, you got some artwork here by Kiragawa with Chiyu. Chiyu is my favorite of the Treasures of Ruin, and I love this artwork too. Just the almost fiery look of the water is super cool. This particular art of Boss's Orders for Getsus, really, really cool. Good stuff all around. Definitely worth grabbing if you're interested in playing with higher rarities. And then we have these two cards, a little less playable. You have Tauros, is the Paldean Tauros with fire type, fire energy, fire type. Yes, fire type. I was saying it right originally. Fire type. Not a especially good card, but still a very pretty card. Very nice artwork, also by Akira Agawa. And then we have Magikarp by one of my favorite new artists from the trading card game, Shinji Kanda. Really, really nice, almost like a pen style of art. Very intricate, almost busy levels of detail. I love the style. It's just super unique. Not a whole lot of that kind of thing in the TCG. There's also some reprints in this set. I listed 2 of the 3 here. I already mentioned Boss Order, so I left off this slide. Boss Order is, of course, one of the art highlights. Boss Orders is in this set. It does extend its legality to the G regulation block. Great Ball and Choice Belt both are also having their regulations expanded to the G regulation block. Not sure how much of a use that is for Choice Belt because all of the Pokemon V will rotate before it does, but that's fine. It doesn't matter. We'll have it for a little bit longer, and it can sit in the bulk box for a year while it's legal. Anyway, honorable mentions. Let's get started with these guys because there's a lot of them. We're going to kind of blast through these honorable mentions because there are so many of them, and I'm going to hit kind of why they got honorable mention, because they probably weren't quite good enough to get on the list. At least it's the first several. Again, there are so many honorable mentions because there are so many extremely good cards in this set. Copperage X, Bronze Body, reducing damage by 30, and anytime it gets hit, and then Nosequake 260. So the damage is pretty good. This card is more on here because come the release of Pokemon card 151, we get a tool that reduces damage taken by 30. So unless your opponent has some sort of shred attack that can one-shot this, like Single Strike Urshifu VMAX with some energies on it, chances are they're not taking this guy out in one hit, and you can do crazy shenanigans to heal this up, like, was it the Fighting Olay? There's some good stuff that you can use to kind of heal this up. And then, of course, you can always Cheryl. I don't know how great that is. Maybe Bronzong is still in the format, so that's an option. People have mentioned maybe potentially using this in some sort of Lost box. You could definitely do that to power this up. There are ways. We don't have Metal Saucer anymore, which does slow this option down. But it's interesting. It's very bulky. 300 HP on a stage 1 is pretty crazy. Definitely be a real pain in the neck to take down. So, Copper. Next up is Titan. Titan is a stage 1 also. A single prize this time. It's here mostly for its special horn attack. So it says 80 plus damage. If this Pokemon has any special energy attached, this attack does 140 more damage. So you can use this in combination with the new special energy we'll look at later to power it up for a single attachment if you are behind on prize cards. And that's a lot of damage for a single attachment on a water type, or on any type, really. 220 is nothing to scoff at. You get something like a Choice Belt that gives you 250. That's pretty great. And you put something like this into a Zorobox, which again is benefited by that special energy we'll look at later. And this is something to keep in mind when you are pulling all the cards that you think you need to grab for Paldea Evolved. It's an uncommon in Japanese. I believe it's an uncommon in English also, so it shouldn't be very expensive. I'm expecting 25 cents probably for a copy. Maybe grab 2 of them, just have them around just in case you feel like Zorobox is taken off. Next up is United Wings. Not the most competitive deck at the moment. Maybe if they release more United Wings Pokemon, that will change. Trying to rely on Ditto makes the deck a little clunky, to say the least. But the deck is pretty decent in a more casual setting, something to just have some fun with. It's kind of along the lines of Lost March, right? It was never very good, but it was very fun. Lost March, I think, did have one top 8 at an event, or at least a top 16. I think it was a top 8. But it never really did well past that. I think it's going to be a similar situation. It probably won't get there, especially with how much more fierce competition is now. Way bigger events, so it's super brutal to get through to the top 8. But we're talking about United Wings. United Wings is the attack all 3 of these Pokemon have. It says this attack does 20 damage for each Pokemon in your discard pile that has United Wings attack. So that is very much akin to Mad Party and very much akin to Night March. This is kind of a Night March 3.0, if you will. It's fun. The damage is a little underwhelming in current standard with Pokemon having 340 HP. But if you're hitting them for weakness, which you can probably do with Wattrel or Murkrow, you're hitting weakness against Palkia or against Lugia. You're hitting weakness against Gardevoir and Mew. So you're hitting good weaknesses, right? Wattrel and Murkrow both have great typings for the current format, which makes this deck a little bit better than it would be otherwise. But against anything else, you're struggling. And the other thing that makes this even worse is the fact that Lost Box and especially Sableye is doing so well right now. And then there's another Pokemon that we're going to talk about here in the honorable mentions that is also a huge threat to this deck. It's again something to be very aware of. But before we move on, we are going to talk quickly about Flamigo's ability, Instaflock. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may search your deck for 3 Flamigo, reveal them and put them in your hand, then shuffle your deck. So you can get 3 of your Flamigo. So you play 1 down with a Nest Ball, right? Or not with an S Ball. Don't do that. With an Ultra Ball, if you do it with an Ultra Ball, it'll go to your hand and you can play it down to your bench and grab those 3 Flamigo and then play another Ultra Ball or something and discard them or play Research or whatever. So they're in the discard pile. It's a quick 60 damage right off the bat. Again, decent in casual setting, probably not in a less competitive setting. Next up is Giacomo. Giacomo says discard a special energy from each of your opponent's Pokemon. This is a control card. Not going to find its way into every deck. Probably shouldn't find its way into every deck. If we get to that point, maybe we're back in a Lugia dominating format like Silver Tempest. But I don't think we're going to get to that point anytime soon. I just don't think we're going to be quite that heavy on special energy like those 2 formats were. This mostly impacts Mew, I think, right now. Lugia, again, to some extent, but Lugia is not quite the force it once was. Even still, this is something to be aware of, not just as a control player, but as a player who's playing not control. Maybe you're playing Mew or you're playing Lugia. You do need to be aware this card does exist, because if a player really wants to, they can slap this down as a pretty decent counter. So you have to be a little bit more wise with how you play your energy. You can't just over-attach. That said, it shouldn't go in every deck, at least not right now. So more of a threat at locals than at regionals. Next up is Pelipper with its ability Hearsay. Hearsay says when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may choose 1. Put a support card from your discard pile into your hand, or search your deck for a support card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So this is either a Versus Seeker or a Luminion on evolution. So when you're evolving the Wingull up into Pelipper, you get the choice of either one. That effect is extremely strong. So why is this not in the top 10? 1, because top 10 is super stacked already. And 2, because unfortunately, this is probably not going to see a whole lot of play right away, because you're having to evolve a Wingull, which is a nice juicy target for something like Sableye or Greninja. So at the moment, Pelipper not super likely to see immediate play, but I do expect it to see play in the future. It may take a year or 2, but I do think it will see play. It's a good effect. It's a very strong effect, and it could definitely see play in some sort of control archetype. Maybe something that prevents your opponent from just attacking. This could be a viable option for looping and chasing out some of your support cards that you need. Meowscarada. Yes, Meowscarada is an honorable mention. So to show you how stacked the top 10 is, Scarlet has Bouquet Magic. You must discard a basic grass energy card from your hand in order to use this ability. Once during your turn, you may put 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This is that big threat for, as I was saying earlier, Wings of Unity or the United Wings Pokemon. It's also a big threat for anything that doesn't like damage counters. Unfortunately, there's not really a way to stop these damage counters at the moment. So if you are able to get Meowscarlet up and rolling, it can be a huge threat. The problem is it can be a bit of a pain in the rear to get up and going. There are options like Arceus and Hisuian Elegant V-Star that can get you the stuff, and then they themselves are fairly squishy liabilities on the bench, and Arceus itself, while it can be an attacker in its own right, maybe not super useful in terms of utility, just because you're not really accelerating any energy to anything else, but you do have access to Starbirth, so you could do something instead like Luminion and Forest Sealstone, which is what we've used in our own testing recently. That does work. It actually helps the decks out quite well. The flip side is there are just other decks out there that kind of do what it tries to do better, right? You're trying to spread damage, you're trying to do it quickly. Play Lost March. Or not Lost March. Play La Zone Box. Don't play Lost March, that's not standard. Play La Zone Box, that's got your spreading, that's got your single prizing. It's a lot less effort for a very similar result. So Lost Box is your better option. Now, of course, there are people that are going to try to make this work in Lost Box, but at that point, you're just clunking up a deck that's already got some problems with having to loss on very critical pieces. And when you're taking away space for the critical pieces and recovery for critical pieces to make room for Meowscarada, it's just not worth the effort, I don't think. Next up is Mimikyu. Mimikyu has the ability Safeguard. You probably recognize that ability if you've been in the game for a while. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon X and Pokemon V. So this is going to prevent them from hitting into Mimikyu unless they have a Shred effect, something like Single Strike or Shifu V Max, or Giratina V. Both of those have shredding effects. They will be able to get through this still, but a lot of decks that don't have something like that or don't run a single prizer will struggle. The problem is a lot of decks now run single prizers. Even Gardevoir just has one baked into its archetype, right? You've got the Baby Guardy. There's no reason not to run a Baby Guardy. And I think that's going to become increasingly common, right? I mean, cards like this are best when the format is very heavily focused on multi-prizers. And thanks to Scarlet and Violet, I think we are shifting away from that. It does have the attack Ghost Eye, put 7 damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon. So definitely something to be aware of, and it is a holo rare. Maybe keep 1 or 2 available to you, kind of like Miltank of old. But yeah, it's good, but it's very situational. Very meta dependent, we should say. Ting Lu, also a honorable mention. One of my more enjoyed decks that we've tested. Actually, we have not tested any of it on stream yet. That will be later this week. So if you're watching this, this should be going up on. I'll put it up on Thursday. I'll put it up today. So if you're watching this, it should be for tomorrow's stream, assuming we don't have any technical issues. Yeah, should be tomorrow. For sure. It's gonna be soon, very soon. We have tested it locally. We have tested it league quite a bit, and it's really good, but it has a very, very big weakness, and that is Path to Peak. So the ability it has is Cursed Land. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent's Pokemon that have any damage counters on them have no abilities except for Pokemon X. So any Pokemon that's not a Pokemon X, so that's a huge chunk. That's all of the stuff like Kirlia, that's Baxcalibur, that's Luminion, that's Genesect, that's all of them, right? Stuff like Swakabilly, yeah, still available, but the limitation is pretty huge. Problem is if you have a Path of Peak, it shuts off this ability, and they can use stuff like Baxcalibur. Meh. All right. So the attack, what's the attack do? Land Scoop does 150 damage, and then you put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So you get this little means of spreading the love and preventing your opponent. You're basically shutting off their abilities as you spread this damage. So you're like, oh, no damage for your Bax, or no ability for your Baxcalibur. Well, no ability for whatever, right? I think I mentioned Luminion earlier. Luminion, the only way it's going to have damage counters on it is if your opponent makes a dumb decision to put damage counters on it when you have Gabe Jabog in play instead of activating the ability first, because it's a synchronous effect, so they would choose, and they should always choose to play the ability first. Anyway, that's beside the point. Curse Land, it's effective. It should do the trick for a lot of Pokemon. If they're not aware of Tinglu, it might catch them off guard. However, their decks, definitely decks, are going to be able to play around this. Our version of the deck plays Spiritomb to shut off Pokemon V, even if this gets shut off. There's also Alakazam that can spread the love with spreading damage counters to shut more Pokemon off, and then help you set up your KOs, right? 150 isn't a ton of damage, but it does add up pretty quickly when they're struggling to keep going. Next up is Luxray. Luxray has the ability Vibrant Flash. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in your hand and you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, you may play this Pokemon onto your bench. So this is, you're behind on prizes, stage 2 on the bench, go. Pretty good. Now, let's make it even crazier. Wild Charge, 180 damage. This Pokemon does 20 damage to itself. Now, you're hitting for weakness against Lugia. That's already nice. And then there's a special energy we're going to mention when we get to the top 10 that will make you power this up in a single attachment, which makes this even crazier because now you can just slap this down, slap that energy down, and immediately start hitting 360 damage against Lugia. That's a definite KO. And 180 is nothing to scoff at, even if you're not hitting for weakness. When you have this Pokemon that just drops down and KOs, support Pokemon like Squawkabilly have like 160 HP, so you're going to be KOing stuff like that. Luminion, right? Very vulnerable also, and it's weak to this, so it's good. It's a very good effect. Luminous Energy is a special energy card in this set. Also did not make the top 10. There are so many good cards in this set. Luminous Energy is a big boost for Regigigas. Regigigas needed a little something to help it get the rest of the way there for this post-rotation standard format with all of the special energies that it rotated. Luminous Energy was just that little something of special energy that helps get it there, I think. There are other cards that both made the top 10 that help it even more than Luminous Energy, but this was definitely part of that puzzle. Luminous Energy says, as long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides every type of energy, but provides only one energy at a time. If the Pokemon this card's attached to has any other special energy attached to it, this card provides one colorless energy instead. So is a rainbow energy, unless you put any other special energy on that Pokemon, then it becomes just a colorless energy. Very, very good with Regis. You can run basic energies instead of special energies to account for this, because Regigigas can attach basic energy cards from the discard pile. It's something a lot of people don't realize. Can do that. Luminous Energy can then fulfill that missing requirement, whatever you have, maybe that one lightning energy or that one fighting energy to attack with Regirock. This lets you do that. This is that missing puzzle that helps boost the consistency of your attacking just that little bit to make it possible to take KOs with the Regis. And then the last of our honorable mentions is Superior Energy Retrieval. It says you can use this card only if you discard 2 other cards from your hand. Put up to 4 basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. You can't choose a card. You discard it with the effect of this card. So this is a card that a lot of decks will love. Just immediately get back 4 energies from your discard pile with playing something like Chinpao or maybe Synflora. Some fun decks too. Definitely a way to do that. It's a very, very strong effect, and then you do have that discard synergy also. So if you're looking to put something else in the discard pile, this lets you do that. Definitely going to see play. Definitely grab yourself a playset. You will want it at some point in the next 2 years. All right, now for the top 10. So what made the top 10? There's so much good stuff in the honorable mentions. Let's start out first with Squawkabilly. This is a very good card. Yes, it's number 10. Barely squeezed its way into the top 10, past some of the really, really good stuff in the honorable mentions. And I put it here because it's a fair, balanced version of Detonate GX, which was itself an extremely strong card. This card will not see play in everything, but it will see play in enough. If you need to discard cards, if you need to set up immediately, if you need to just turn through your deck, whether that's United Wings or Tinglu or whatever, this is your guy. This is the one you go, okay, I'm going to grab him from my deck, I'm going to slap him down, and I'm going to use Squawk and Seize. Now, what's even better about this ability is even if you start it, you can still use this ability. Squawk and Seize says, once during your first turn, you may discard your hand and draw 6 cards. You can't use more than one Squawk and Seize ability during your turn, right? That's fine. That's a-okay, because you don't have to play it down from your hand during a turn to activate this ability. So if you start Squawkabilly, you can still use it. And it's so good because it means you can nest ball into it. That's something you can't do with basically any of these other kinds of effects. So you do have that boost to consistency that Squawkabilly will give you. It is a very squishy 160 HP basic that gives up 2 prize cards. So if you are able to collapse it away or Thornton it away or something it away as quick as possible, maybe Colress it up, not Colress, Sharon's it up. If you're able to get rid of it, definitely get rid of it because it is a vulnerability, but it is a very good effect. And then its attack isn't terrible either. Motivate does 20 damage and then allows you to attach 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. So a little bit of something if you're really desperate to attach, you're able to do that. At number 9 is Spiritomb. Spiritomb says, Spiritomb has an ability that says Pitch Black Disaster. As long as this Pokemon is in play, basic Pokemon V in play, both yours and your opponents have no abilities. It does not have to be in the active spot. It can be on the bench, which is great because this is a way to say no to Genesect. However, you need to be aware that if you are not aware, fusion builds of Mew can attach a Fusion Strike energy to their Genesects and then use Fusion Strike system anyway. So while this may slow them down and may make them waste their attachments of Fusion energy, Fusion Strike energy, there are ways for me to get around this. But this does shut down stuff like Luminion V. They won't be able to activate the ability when they play it down because Pitch Black Disaster will shut it off. So, interesting effect. Makes those Pokemon V a little bit weaker than they used to be. Makes you push a little bit forward into the X era. Then it has Fade Out, does 10 damage, but this Pokemon all cards attached to it in your hand. So if you need to get rid of it, you can. Cool. Number 8. Yes, this is number 8. Chien-Pao. Chien-Pao has the ability Shivery Chill. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may search your deck for up to 2 basic water energy cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. And then that's his ability, so you basically get a free Capacious Bucket for each Chien-Pao you can get into the active spot during your turn. And then it has the attack Hail Blade. 60 damage for each basic water energy card that you discard from your Pokemon. And this attack does, again, 60 damage for each card you discard this way. So, if you are throwing a crap ton of water energy onto your board for some reason or somehow, you can get a crap ton of damage against your opponent's Pokemon. That's pretty nifty. How might we do that? Let's look at number 7. Baxcalibur has the ability Super Cold. As often as you like during your turn, you may attach a basic water energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon. This is Rain Dance. This is Deluge. This is your buddy. This is the guy that puts all the water energy on your field as quickly as possible, right? It also can attack, does 130 damage, right? That's not bad for a single prizer that's primarily there for support. So this, together with Chien-Pao, obviously they're an archetype together, but the reason Baxcalibur wins out a little bit over Chien-Pao in this list is Baxcalibur is a little bit more flexible, right? Baxcalibur does not have to attach to water-type Pokemon. It does not have to attach to something on the bench. It can just attach. This is your, you have energy, okay, attach it guy. If you need some sort of acceleration for something that can take colorless attack costs or something that's going to take water attack costs, either way, you're set. Baxcalibur's your guy. So Baxcalibur, number 7. Super, super strong effect. This will see play. Grab your play set. Grab whatever art you feel like, whether that's the pre-release promos, the stat prints, whatever. Grab them because you're going to want them. Number 6, Bravery Charm. This is Cape of Toughness Plus. It has the benefit of not being limited by the restriction of Pokemon GX, which doesn't matter if you're standard format. But Bravery Charm is still really, really good. Does it warrant number 6? Yeah, maybe there's an argument to be said this is number 8 and Chien-Pao and Baxcalibur can move up. But this is more flexible than both of them, right? This is going to fit into more decks. This is going to slap into Ting Lu. This is going to slap into decks that really, really want a little bit of something, right? Maybe Blissey makes a comeback. I doubt it, but maybe Blissey makes a comeback. This could potentially be how it does it, right? That extra 50 HP does matter quite a bit for a lot of decks. And so Bravery Charm gets number 6. And number 5, Jet Energy. And Jet Energy says, as long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides colorless energy. When you attach this card from your hand to one of your benched Pokemon, switch that Pokemon with your active Pokemon. Now, that's pretty crazy. This is especially good for Lost Box, right? You flower selecting with your active Comfey. You attach Jet Energy to the bench Comfey. It floats its way into the active spot. You can use your flower selecting, and then you can discard that Jet Energy to pay the retreat cost, and put a third Comfey in the active spot to use a third flower selecting. It is fantastic. Jet Energy is super, super good. There are other decks, of course, that benefit from something like this. Quackleval is one of them if you watch our streams with that. Deck's not the best, but it does work. It does help it. Jet Energy is super, super strong. Decks will probably play, decks that want it will play probably 2 copies at most, 3 if it really, really needs it. But it is a super strong card. Definitely is going to see play, and it's going to fit just that little niche for different decks. And I'm here for it. It's like what they've wanted Warp Energy to be. They wanted Warp Energy to be that little, cool switching around effect. But Warp Energy, it was like, well, you can move it to your bench. It's like, well, boo. Not good enough. Jet Energy, on the other hand, is pretty fantastic. Number 4, Artisan. Once during each player's turn, that player may search their deck for a basic Pokemon that doesn't have a rule box and put it onto their bench. Then that player shuffles their deck. So while you can't get something like a Radiant Pokemon, say Radiant Greninja, or a Pokemon X or Pokemon V or whatever, this is your guy for setting up any other deck, right? This is your Ralts getter, this is your Reggie's getter, this is your Sprigatito, your Fuecoco, your whatever, right? This is one of the cards I mentioned earlier when I was talking about Luminous Energy. This is an extremely strong effect for finding your setup, right? This is how you find your basics. It is a stadium card, so if you're playing a deck that really isn't super interested in a different stadium card, this is your option. This is your best choice, right? This is your grabbing. This is you grabbing what you need to set up. This is I can't. This is extra nest balls that happen to get rid of stuff like Path of the Peak, right? And because a lot of decks now are moving toward having to actually evolve from squishy Pokemon up instead of having these big basics like Pokemon V. This is going to be increasingly useful as we move further and further into the Scarlet and Violet era. You'll have these Pokemon that are evolving from these single prizers up into the big guys, and even though the big guys aren't free of the rule box, they evolve from Pokemon that are. So definitely grab your playset of Artisan. At number 3, Reversal Energy. I've mentioned this card several times already. Referenced it when I talked about Titan and Luxray. This card also will very much go into Gardevoir. This card is cracked. As long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides colorless energy if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent. And if this card is attached to an evolution Pokemon that doesn't have a rule box, this card provides every type of energy, but provides only 3 energy at a time. So this is a triple rainbow energy when it's attached to an evolution Pokemon, so it has to have either evolved or been put into play as a stage 1 or stage 2. But it's triple rainbow, right? That's super good. I don't know that this really needs more explanation, right? This immediately powers up Titan. All 3 of those energy costs are immediately filled with 1 attachment if you're buying on prize cards. This immediately powers up Luxray. This gives an extra 90 damage for Gardevoir. This thing moves 30 is the multiplier for Baby Gardevoir. Super, super strong. This is going to see play. Once again, grab your playset, have it on hand. I can't imagine it'll be incredibly expensive. It's an uncommon, but definitely have it on hand. It's super, super good. At number 2, Super Rod. Super Rod says shuffle up to 3 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from your discard pile back into your deck. So this is very reminiscent of Ordinary Rod, which just left the standard format, but this is actually a reprint of a much older card originally printed in Neo, in the Neo era, and more recently reprinted in, with this effect at least, in the Black and White era. But this effect is extraordinarily strong. If you have a deck that feels itself missing Super Rod, like, I don't know, Reggie's, or if you're a deck that just needs to be able to recover, evolution Pokemon, which is quite a few of them, your Prevos, stuff like Sprigatito or Ralts, this is the card that you want. This is the card that you need, right? And you are able to get 3 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy. So Ordinary Rod, you were able to do 2 and 2. This is just said, okay, well, you want 3, so do 3. That's fine. If you're playing a deck like Regigigas that really wants to keep its energy in the discard pile, but you'd like to get a third Reggie back into the deck, then Super Rod does the job. So Super Rod is super good in that respect. Now, number one is coming up here in a second, and I'm just going to say that I don't know if anyone's going to fail to guess this because this card is so obvious at number one. In fact, I would dare to say that anyone not putting it at number one on their top lists, whether that's top 20, top 5, top 10, doesn't matter. If they're not putting it at number one, they don't know what they're talking about. This card is the strongest card in the entire set, and probably one of the very strongest cards in the entire standard format, and even still one of the strongest cards in expanded too. It is I don't know if you couldn't guess by the pun earlier. This card is something that everybody has been begging for a very long time. Some sort of comeback mechanic with actual substance, an N-like effect that has some of the flavor of Marnie. Iono says each player shuffles their hand and puts it on the bottom of their deck. If either player put any cards on the bottom of their deck in this way, each player draws a card for each of their remaining prize cards. So basically, the further ahead you are on prizes, the less you will draw. Or the further along you are with the prize cards, the less you will draw. So you will have to be very wise about how you take your prize cards. You may not want to necessarily take that big, easy knockout because it may put you at a huge disadvantage with getting Ionoed. You may have to take a different prize route to take your victory. You may have to play very wisely with cards you're thinning out of your deck so that if you do get Ionoed, you're able to still find stuff as you need it. Maybe you won't load up your hand with things that you might otherwise load up because it's going to get thrown on the bottom of your deck with Iono. Iono requires significantly more skill than something like Marnie. Marnie is just kind of a throw it down and pray. Iono is also better early on in the game for both players than Marnie would be, right? You're getting 6 cards. It's very, very strong. There's literally no doubt that this is the best card on the set. I am extremely happy to see this card in the set. I myself have been asking for N forever. I do wish this is shuffled like N. I think that would be a little bit healthier. But I do appreciate the fact that this saves time because players just shuffle their hands and throw it on the bottom of the deck, which is good. That said, putting it on the bottom of the deck and shuffling this way also means it's a much stronger effect than N because you have to be able to play around things getting thrown to the bottom of your deck, right? Within, you can say you can play a little bit less wisely and still potentially draw back into what was in your hand. Whereas with Iono, if your only boss that you have in your deck is or left in play is in your hand and you get hit with Iono, unless your deck is going to be like 1 or 2 cards or something that you'll be able to draw back into with Iono, like you'll hit it anyway. Which, let's be honest, that's not happening. You're screwed. So I don't know. Super strong card. Definitely, despite my misgivings with the way it shuffles onto the deck, rather at the bottom of the deck, I do think it's very, very healthy for the game. Definitely something the game has needed, and I very much welcome it. In our testing, it has been just astounding. Any deck that can fit it in really, really wants to. It does hurt some decks. Lost Box does take a little bit of a hit from it. But just like with Marnie, I think it's able to rebound. I don't know, isn't instant death to it. So I don't know, it does wrap up this top 10 list and the enormous honorable mentions list. Paldea Evolved is an extremely great set. Do keep an eye on my Twitter. If you're not following me on Twitter at JustinBasilTCG, I will be posting probably Saturday morning or Friday evening, depending on when I can get the data, the information about the build and battle kits for Paldea Evolved. So if you're interested in that, we do know the pre-release promos, but we don't necessarily know the clusters that come with each promo just yet. We will find that out as soon as I'll find out as soon as I can post those up. But with that said, thank you everyone for watching. It's been great to look at Paldea Evolved, to test Paldea Evolved. I'm very much happy that Paldea Evolved is coming out. I do hope that Obsidian Flames can have some measure of the goodness that Paldea Evolved has. I'm not super stoked on it because it does look like it's going to be a largely filler set for collectors, but we'll see. sometimes they surprise us and they give something cool in there. So thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.